Hey, good morning, happy Monday. If you're joining me on Monday morning, we get another amazing week to continue building the lives and the careers that we want. To reiterate, again, why I come out with these videos every Monday morning is because my mission is to help you achieve your greatest potential, both in your personal life and in your professional career. So what I'm really excited about to dive in and what we're going to cover in this video is a little bit of mine and also your journey from self-doubt to self-belief. And this is a journey that any goal, any long-term mission or pursuit or dream, anything that you want to achieve, you're going to have to go through this journey. And so what I want to break down in this video are 6 different parts. So one is the journey from self-doubt to self-belief. So if we were to kind of boil that down into what are the different stages of approaching that journey, what does that look like? And then the second is going to be what are the required investments for achieving worthwhile long-term goals in any of the goals that you set for yourself that are long-term. And think of long-term as anything longer than a month. I mean, it takes consistent focus and energy and investment into this thing. And so in any endeavor, these are going to be requirements. So then 3 is understanding uncertainty, fear, and self-doubt. So these 3 are very deeply embedded within all of us, and how these 3 connect and how one creates the other is super important to understand, because when you can understand how these 3 are at play with one another, you can begin to understand, become aware, and it's only after awareness can you actually make a change in something. So then the 4th part is understanding limiting beliefs, mindset, and success, and those are going to be heavily influenced by the 3rd part, uncertainty, fear, and self-doubt. So we'll talk about how 3 and 4 are connected as well. And then 5 is what are the required qualities for success. And so note that what the investments are going to be slightly different than the qualities, even though the investments as well as the personal qualities are going to be heavily influenced by one another. And then finally is I have 3 different questions that I'm going to pose to you for your journey from self-doubt to self-belief. So I'll also include a little bit of my journey, just as examples and metaphors for this video, but I'm excited. I hope you find this very relevant for anything that you're trying to achieve that's big and worthwhile in your life. And with that, let's get started. All right, so we're going to start off with talking about the overall journey from self-doubt to self-belief. And we're going to start with kind of a high level. Now, you can see I did change the green marker. For next week, I will buy another black marker. I realize this is very hard to see now, but the black marker was dying. So there are kind of 6 main parts that I want to walk through for the journey from self-doubt to self-belief. So how this journey starts is we initially come up with a goal or with some worthwhile dream or long-term endeavor that we want to achieve. And so what that means is we need to initially start with a desired outcome. That's our North Star, if you will. That is where we want to go. But then once we kind of set that firmly in place, well then logically the very next thing that we do is we say, well, where are we today? Which is our starting point. And so that could be our current career situation, that could be our current skills, it could be our current relationships, it could be our current health, it could be our current finances, it could be like you name any part of your life. It could be your current level of belief in terms of spiritual beliefs. So it's wherever you are, there's a desired outcome that comes to your mind, and then you also, the moment you create a desired outcome in your mind, you also at that exact same moment give birth, if you will, to the idea of I'm not there yet, so this is where I am today, the starting point. Well then, once you have these 2 points in your mind, something magical and either good or bad happens. And for most people, what happens is it leads to the 3rd step, which is uncertainty and what's called the tyranny of how. Now, I've heard multiple people say the tyranny of how. I first heard of it from Tony Robbins, but the idea of it is that whenever we have a goal that's large, and it's something that's not achieved in a day or a week or maybe even a month. It is a long-term worthwhile goal. Well, the moment that we create that, we feel this kind of rush of overwhelm because we realize, oh my gosh, there's so much that we have to do. There's so many things I need to learn. There's so much work that I have to do. All these things just start overwhelming us. And then the big question is how? How the hell am I going to do that? How am I, me with my skills, my knowledge, my experience, my resources, my where I live, whatever, this giant rush kind of comes over us and immediately puts us into a state of uncertainty. Well, this is toxic because that leads us to the fourth stage, which is fear and self-doubt. And so whenever there's kind of a goal that someone wants to do, well, most people end up not doing their dreams or pursuing their dreams or goals because of fear and self-doubt. And yet they don't really know where that comes from. Well, it usually comes from uncertainty and the tyranny of how. But then once we come to realization of, okay, I am a little afraid of this, and I do have this tinge or this strong sense of self-doubt, well, that then leads us to the fifth point, which is a decision point. And this is where most people, and I've said this quite a few times, but I'm going to keep saying it's most people's dreams die in their mind or on their lips. And it's because they hit this level 5 or this fifth point, and that's where a decision has to be made. And we're either going to make a decision out of fear or we're going to make a decision out of courage. Now, some people say, well, I'm just not going to decide. Not deciding is a decision. It's a decision not to do something. And so if someone just keeps procrastinating, they're deciding consciously or subconsciously to procrastinate. They're deciding to not do something. And so this decision, if it's made out of fear, then someone's not going to start the journey. They will never reach the self-belief because they haven't started the journey. And so as long as someone allows fear to define how they make decisions, they'll never fully make that journey from self-doubt to self-belief. And so kind of this decision point is crucial because this will determine our lives in every part of our life. And so then if we make it out of courage, then courage says, okay, I might be afraid, but I'm going to do it anyways. And so then that brings us to the sixth stage, which is really this, I kind of have it as like this looping circle here. And that's because the very first initial try that we do something, it's probably not going to be successful because we've never done it before. It's not like you pick up an instrument and immediately, play Mozart. Or you try a new skill, like you want to build code and then all of a sudden you know how to write code. Or you know how to write a novel, or you know how to build a business, or you know how to lead a team of 30 people. So there's so many things that we don't know how to do, but we'll never actually become confident or competent or belief in ourselves if we never start that journey of iteration. So kind of what the sixth stage says is, okay, I might not know perfectly how to do it. I'm okay with that. I have the courage to do it anyway. And in this process, what I'm doing is I'm starting with an initial strategy. And so in a couple of videos back, I talk about a gut feeling or a gut reaction or intuition. Well, oftentimes that's kind of the creative process. And that's going to lead us to kind of come up with this initial creative strategy of how we think we can do something. Well, once we come up with that strategy, then we have to take action on it. Because that action is going to be what gives us feedback. And then once we get feedback from something, then we can begin to iterate it. And as we iterate it over and over and over again until we figure out what works, because that's, people will try one or two things and maybe those one or two things don't work and then they just decide they can't do it. Or maybe, I'm not cut out for it. I'm not talented enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not good looking enough. I'm not rich enough. I'm not whatever it is. People will literally cut themselves out of their dream after one or two tries. And so we can't do that. We can't allow that to happen because that feedback, some people call it failure, and we'll talk about that, but that's necessary. We need the feedback. And what that feedback does is it allows us to iterate the strategy over and over and over and over and over again. And then eventually that's what's going to lead to evolution. And theory of evolution is, it's not something that happens extremely quickly, but it could. And so evolution can happen over different time frames, but we need to understand that any time that we have a long-term outcome, it's going to have to undergo a series of evolutions, of iterations. So this is kind of at a high level, the journey from self-doubt to self-belief, and kind of the biggest takeaway that I want you to kind of think about your life in your career and any stage or any long-term goal that you have is, this is where most people get stuck, is at the decision point. The decision to either, I'm afraid and I'm not going to do something, or to say that, okay, I might be afraid, but I'm going to do it because it's important to me and I want that outcome. So I'm going to make the decision to do it anyway. So another point that I wanted to add before we dive into part 2 is that notice that the tyranny of how came before the decision. And what's important to know is that most people, when they're going to achieve a long-term goal, most often they don't know how they're going to do it. They have a vision. They have an idea of what they want. And rather than trying to figure out steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, instead all they figure out is, okay, if I can achieve step 1, I will figure out then step 2. And after I figure out step 2, I'll iterate, evolve, achieve step 2, then I'll move on to step 3. And so whatever it is that you want in your life, you're not supposed to know the whole strategy. And I mean, just a simple example is COVID. People had 5-year business plans, 10-year business plans. Well, those were absolutely destroyed with COVID. There are people who had to go through traditional, omni-channel marketing to complete revolutionary changes to straight to DTC or direct to consumer, all digital advertising or digital marketing and sales. So there's in whatever it is that you want to achieve, don't get stuck in trying to figure out everything all at once, because you're not supposed to. You're just supposed to know, all right, what is step 1? How can I start to progress? And if I can make that progress, then I'll figure out step 2, and just one foot after the other, one step after the other. All right, so I digress. So now, number 2 is asking ourselves, all right, well, what are the required investments for achieving a worthwhile long-term goal? And this is something that we always want to keep in mind whenever we are setting kind of the stake in the ground that, I'm sailing my ship this way. I will achieve this long-term goal. Well, in order to get there, we must be willing to do and invest these things. So the very first part is we must be able to make a decision, commit, and be willing to make sacrifices. So in terms of a decision, a lot of people kind of think of the decision as you're going to have that fear versus courage decision point, right? And so that initial decision, before the decision itself, we're going to have a lot of emotion. We're going to have a lot of uncertainty. We're going to have a lot of questioning. We're going to be thinking through, can I not? How would I? All these different things. But when you make the decision, it's no longer about can I or can I not? Will I or will I not? It's if the decision is made, boom. Everything else is I'm leaving that all behind me. I'm committed to it. I'll figure it out. It is no longer a question of can I or can I not? Will I or will I not? It's done. I'm committed. Let's figure out. I will figure it out. I believe I will do it. And so that is the mindset shift that we need to make whenever we make that commitment. It's no longer a question. It will be done. I see it as done. It's just a matter of time at that point. So after we make the decision, then we make the commitment. And the third part is the sacrifice. So a lot of people want things in their lives, but they're not willing to make sacrifices. Well, then if we're not willing to make sacrifices, that means that we're not willing to make the other investments that are necessary to achieve a long-term goal. We can have anything, but we cannot have everything. And I'll say that again because when I first heard that, it hit me hard. And I hope it hits you in the same way, because it's so important that we can have anything, but we cannot have everything. And that is the decision that we need to make in terms of a sacrifice. Am I willing to sacrifice other areas of my life in order to achieve this long-term goal? So if we are willing to do these first 3 things, then we can move on to the other investments. So the second is focus, energy, and emotion. A lot of people live their lives scattered and kind of focused on trying to achieve 1 or 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 things, and there's no real focus on one long-term goal or a couple really important long-term goals. And so I made another full video on how to focus and the importance of it. So I won't recap that, but we must be able to focus. And when we can focus, then what we're doing is we're focusing our energy and our emotion. And if we can focus our energy and channel it into one long-term goal or a couple really important goals, we will break through. We will figure it out. And the emotion. So the emotional part is, if something is important to us, we will figure out the how. If it's important to us, it's the why. If the why is important, we will always figure out the how. And that is kind of the emotional investment is, am I really emotionally committed to making this thing happen? Because if it's not important to you, if you just don't care, it's not going to get done. You will not achieve it if you don't care, especially if it's a long-term goal. Because if it's long-term and you don't care, you're going to force yourself just sheer willpower to do it for maybe a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, something like that. But if it's not that important to you, it will fall off. And that's when people yo-yo in diets or yo-yo in workouts, when people start a business and then they fail and then they start another one and then they fail. It's like There's no real fully emotional commitment to making something happen. So then the third part is time. Of course, we're not going to achieve a worthwhile long-term goal in a short period of time. It's going to take patience, and it's going to take a long-term commitment in order to make something happen, because that iteration cycle, the evolution of achieving a goal, it's not something that happens in a short time frame. We need time to be able to take the action, get the feedback, re-strategize, rethink, and then re-implement and continue iterating to achieve it. And so then the third part is skills, knowledge, and experience. If we want to do something, well, then we need to figure out, at least at the base level, what is necessary in order to begin. So in any business, in any team, in any long-term goal, there's going to be certain information that you need. And so if we have it, well, then we know that we can invest it. But if we don't have it, then maybe what we'll need to do is invest first in developing the skills, knowledge, and experiences so that we can do it. So maybe that's picking up a new skill or learning some different part of knowledge. Or the other option is we can find other people who have these things. And that's kind of to the next point, is relationships. Oftentimes in long-term goals, there are going to be certain relationships that also need to be invested, or other people that are brought into the success of this long-term goal. And then finally is resources. So think of that as money or equipment or anything else, either intangible, tangible, that has to be invested. Now, there are a lot of goals that don't require money, but most of the world runs on money. And so for a lot of our long-term goals, money is a requirement. So this is kind of a brief overview of the investments that we need, but most importantly is, if we don't make the decision, commit, and we're willing to sacrifice, we will not make these investments. And if we're not willing to make these investments, we will not achieve the long-term worthwhile goal. All right, so now we can dive into the third part, which is trying to understand the relationship between uncertainty, fear, and then ultimately self-doubt. And they kind of form a cascading effect. And so it starts with uncertainty, which I showed you in the journey, kind of that layout from the starting point to the desired outcome and what that looks like. But it's going to start with uncertainty, and that's the tyranny of how. We don't know how something is going to happen. We don't know what it's going to look like. And the important point is that in every point in our life, in every area of our life, we have uncertainty. And for some people, that creates anxiety, stress, worry, self-doubt, which we'll talk about, but all these intense negative emotions. For some people, it cripples them. They can't make any decision in their life because they're so weighed down by this uncertainty. They can't make financial investments. They can't make career decisions. They can't make personal commitments or relationships. There's this lack of certainty in their life drives them insane. But the thing is that the moment we realize we cannot control the future, there will always be, and actually really quickly, what I want to share with you is, think of it as there's three different ways to look at anything in life. There's three buckets. So the first bucket is things that we control. The second bucket is things that we can influence. And then the third bucket is things that we have no control over and we cannot influence. Most people live the majority of their life focusing and thinking about and emotionally reacting to things that they have absolutely no control over and they have absolutely no influence over. And that drives an enormous sense of uncertainty, which then causes stress, anxiety, worry, depression, all these other negative emotions. And so what we need to do instead is live the vast majority of our life, 80% of our time, our emotion, our thoughts, our energy, our actions, behavior, everything on things that we actually can control, because that's how we improve our life. That's how we make change in our lives. And then the other, maybe 19% would be on things that we can influence, and maybe 1% on things that we have no control or no influence over. And think of that as being informed. But the uncertainty is us trying to know the future. And we cannot know the future. And so what this leads to is, for many people, is fear. Because the question that keeps playing on repeat over and over and over again in their mind is, well, what if this happens? What if that happens? What if this happens? And then they just beat themselves into a pulp thinking about, oh my gosh, if that happens, I'd be devastated. I'd be ruined. And so these what if scenarios, and notice too that a lot of this what if questioning, it's not conscious. it is these deep emotional feelings that we're not logically thinking through all the worst case scenarios, but underneath all that, subconsciously, our brain is going, oh my God, it'd be death. It would be the worst thing in the world. And so that stirs up these very real senses of fear, of being afraid to make a decision, being afraid to commit to something because of the uncertainty. Well, there are there's kind of four that I want to share with you here that affect all of us. Four really deeply ingrained human nature fears. So the first one is the fear of failure. And the failure is afraid of not achieving whatever it is that we set out to do. And you can also think of it as, some people might think of it as a failure. Other people might see it as a disappointment, or a self-reflection of themselves. And that kind of leads into the other one. But then there's the fear of failure, but then there's the fear of rejection, of confronting someone or asking someone or approaching someone or trying to do something, getting told no, or asking a guy or girl out and being told no, or asking investors for a capital raise and being told no, or trying to negotiate with a manager and being told no. So there's so many different areas of our lives where we're terrified of rejection. And for a lot of people, hearing the word no is equivalent to, in their mind, I'm a failure. I'm horrible. I'm the worst. I'm not worthy. I'm not good enough. I'm not whatever enough. And that is rejection it's a knife in the stomach to a lot of people. And so then there's the fear of loss. So if I put in something and I lose it, well, what am I left with? And a lot of people, they will live their lives trying to protect things rather than trying to give and grow. And so the fear of loss drives a lot of people. And then the final part is the fear of loneliness. And that also kind of goes hand in hand with the fear of rejection, the fear of judgment. And it's being afraid of not fitting in, not being accepted, not being liked by other people. And there's a lot of people that will make decisions that it's not even really for themselves, it's to fit in, to fit in with everyone else because they don't want to be alone. And so these are kind of four very deeply ingrained fears that all of us have in every area of our life. And we need to acknowledge them because only if we become aware of them can we actually confront them and override them. And so if we don't, this fear will eventually lead to self-doubt. And how I want you to think about self-doubt from now on in every part of your life, self-doubt is a self-protection mechanism. It is you trying to protect yourself. It is you saying, hey man, don't go out there and fail. Hey man, don't go out there and get rejected. Hey man, don't go out there and lose your shirt or lose your money or lose the relationship or lose whatever. And hey, you do not want to be alone because being alone is painful and it's sad and it is just no bueno. So what instead we want to do is we want to realize that that's all we're trying to do is we're literally just trying to protect ourselves emotionally. That is why self-doubt exists. And the reason this is so important is because this is what controls us. If we doubt ourselves in a given situation, that is going to affect us mentally and physically. Mentally, it's going to affect the decision that we make. But then physically is the actions that we take, the behavior that we take. So I'm sure that, in your life, you're probably already starting to think through, where's this cascading effect of uncertainty leading to fear, which then leads to self-doubt. I'm not good enough, smart enough, fast enough, strong enough, intelligent enough, good looking enough, well-connected enough, whatever enough. I don't have a good enough background, whatever. But this is what's going through your mind in so many different parts of life. Cool. So now that we understand how that cascading effect of uncertainty to fear to self-doubt, how that plays out, now we can go on to the next step, which is understanding limiting beliefs, mindset, and success. And I'll also rope in kind of success versus failure, which is the final part we'll talk about. But so the reason kind of we started with the uncertainty to fear to self-doubt is because limiting beliefs is one step deeper. So what I mean by that is limiting beliefs is what creates, it's what causes uncertainty, fear, and self-doubt. So this is the root cause. Think of this as if we need to treat the disease, well, these are just uncertainty, fear, and self-doubt. Those are symptoms. The disease is the limiting belief. And so limiting beliefs are going to form all these other feelings and actions in our lives because limiting beliefs determine our mindset. Beliefs determine our mindset. think of our mindset as it's a culmination of beliefs and values. And if we have negative beliefs about ourselves or about the world or about what's possible or not possible, what's good or what's bad, all of those are going to directly affect how we operate in the world. And so for a lot of people, a lot of people have negative, toxic, limiting beliefs about themselves, about other people, about what's possible, and that affects how they feel. Because how you think is going to affect how you feel. And in terms of your logic, the decisions that you make is also going to be affected by what you believe is true or not true. If you believe that you're not smart, well, you're probably not going to do something that requires a smart person because you're going to rule yourself out. You're going to say, nope, not me. And so limiting beliefs will affect our feel, or really just our mindset affects our feelings first, then our thoughts, and then ultimately the decisions that we make in our life. And then the decisions are going to affect what behavior we actually take, what actions that we take in our lives. So limiting beliefs could be any area of our life. It could be about religion. It could be about relationships. It could be about looks. It could be about style. It could be about intelligence. It could be about government. It could be about freedom, equality. Like all these different parts of our lives are all shaped and informed by how we think about things, how we believe things truly are. And the reason this is so important is because we have beliefs about what is success, and we also have beliefs about what is failure. And a lot of people get hung up on their own definitions or their own beliefs about success and failure. And this is where I want to, share a little bit about my story. So I originally believed that success was outcompeting and doing very well compared or relative to other people. And that's kind of, it's a very competitive mindset where, all right, there's one winner, and what do I need to do to win the game? What do I need to do to win the position or win the opportunity or whatever? And so kind of growing up, it was a competitive mindset, competition in grades and competition in sports, competition in everything. So then I got to college, competed in grades, did very well, and then I competed for investment banking position at Goldman Sachs. I got it. And then there was the competition at Goldman of doing very well, being a top bucket analyst, whatever. But then eventually you hit a point where it's like, am I going to keep doing that for the rest of my life? Is that really success? Is that what it's all about? So when I kind of changed my desired outcome, which was what I wanted for my life, once I changed that, well, I lost my framework for success because I then left a very structured, competitive environment where I knew how to play the game. I knew what it took to win, to all of a sudden I have no rule book. There's no understanding of success. There's no one to compare myself to. But I was still stuck in that mindset of trying to believe that that's what success was, is comparing myself and how I do relative to other people. And that's the vast majority of the world. We've all been conditioned to believe that is success. How are you stacking up compared to everyone else around you? And so when I kind of went from this very prestigious, top 1 or 4% position in the world to all of a sudden not having income, not having any credibility, not really having anyone to look to or support on that was like physically, I didn't have a team. So it was all these different things that I was like, my whole definition of success started crumbling. And at the same time, I thought I was a failure because I realized, oh my gosh, I didn't build the business I thought I would in 3 to 6 months. I'm not making as much money as I used to be making. I'm not as prestigious as I used to be compared to other friends or other people that I know. And so it was all this internal conflict started happening. And what that did was I had a very limiting belief that I wasn't good enough. I wasn't smart enough. I wasn't going to be able to pull through. I wouldn't make it work. And both personally and professionally, all these limiting beliefs started kind of bubbling up to the top because I kept frustratingly I don't even think that's a word, but I kept asking myself, why do I feel like such a failure? When I know I've done good things, why do I feel like such a failure? And it was because I had very toxic definitions for success and failure. Success meant doing better than other people, and failure pretty much meant doing worse than other people. But it wasn't actually attached to a goal. It was just relative to everybody else, who everybody has different values and different beliefs. And so what I want to challenge you to really think through is, how have you defined success in your life? Because if success is defined on comparing yourself to other people, you will always be unhappy. Always. Because Everybody is ahead of us in one way, shape, or form. They're either smarter in one certain area. They play a musical instrument slightly better than you. They speak another language that you don't speak. They have more money. They have more, maybe they're better looking. Maybe they're in more shape. Maybe whatever it is, I guarantee that you will be able to find someone who has more than you in one area of your life. Personally or professionally, spiritually, financially, whatever. And so that is a trap. It's an endless trap that we can't win. And what we need to realize is that success is entirely based on us. What do I want for my life? What do I want for my career? What are my dreams? And am I making, this is now my definition of success is, am I making progress? If I am not making progress, well, then I'm not successful. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm a failure, because now I've restructured how I think about failure. Failure is no longer a bad outcome, or not looking good to other people, or not being prestigious to other people. It's at this point, it's I don't really care what other people think, because they're not the ones trying to achieve my goal. And so as long as I'm making progress, I'm successful, but I'm only a failure if I give up. If I give up, or if I never try, then I'm a failure. And so what that does is that pushes me to say, all right, I don't know how it's going to happen. I don't know how I'm going to do this thing. I know this is going to be really hard, but you know what? If I make progress, I'm successful. And as long as I try and I never give up, I will never fail, because it's an iterative evolutionary process. And so take a quick second to think about your life, whether it's health and fitness, or finances, or your career, or a certain relationship, or any other part of your life. Ask yourself, where do I feel like I'm failing? Where do I feel like I'm not good enough? And start to dig into, what are the rules that you have for failure? Because I guarantee that you have rules set up for that, and that is making you feel like it's a limiting belief. You believe that you're not doing something successfully. So this is kind of befuddled, but the most important thing that I want you to know is that if you don't believe something to be true, or you believe something is not true, that will affect how you perceive the world. How you perceive the world is going to affect your feelings, your thoughts, your decisions, and your behavior. And the single biggest example I want to share with people in your journey from self-doubt to self-belief is how you think about success and failure is going to affect everything. Because a lot of people have very negative, toxic, limiting beliefs about what is success and what is failure. So before we move on to the next section, I want to include one more example kind of from my story of starting my own business and getting to where I am today. And one of the deepest limiting beliefs that I had to overcome that I think is very relevant for a lot of people. So one of the limiting beliefs that I had was, I am too young to start my own business. And I thought, I don't have decades of experience. I don't have all this, I don't have an MBA or a PhD or 30 years of experience to be able to sell to clients. And that was a very deep limiting belief that I had. But as I started networking and growing my contacts and relationships, well, all of a sudden I started realizing that older people had the exact same limiting belief, just on the flip side, which is they're too old to start a business. They have too much responsibility. They can't take the risk. And so it's a belief. Belief has polarity. For our mind, in order to comprehend something, it needs to have a spectrum, and it needs to understand we can't comprehend good without bad. We don't know right from wrong. It's like in any given belief system that we have about anything, there's always a polarity between it. And so I started realizing that where I am on this pole is I'm too young. I thought I was too young. And then other people find themselves on the exact opposite side, which is too old. And so when you can actually kind of map that out, you can start to realize how crazy that is. Well, what is the perfect age? At what point do you become good enough? And that led me down the road of realizing that this limiting belief, what I thought was true, had no basis. There are people out there that are, 15 years old running businesses, 18 years old with startups, multi-million-dollar startups. There are 60, 70, 80-year-olds that are starting businesses. They're not too old. And so you can start to realize a lot of the things that we believe are not based on fact. They're not true. We've come up with them ourselves, and we're acting emotionally. And because of that, we're limiting ourselves in our own lives. And instead, what you can do is you can actually turn these limiting beliefs upside down and start to realize there are actually benefits. And that's really what I've realized, is that because I am younger, I'm able to think a lot more creatively and build brand new approaches that other people don't. I've been very, very creative in my business and how I work with my clients. Well, if someone has been in the industry doing the same thing for 10, 20 years, they're not going to change. And they're using archaic and old models that no longer really work in the fast-paced technical age. And so there's been a lot of advantage that I've had, and realizing that I am young and I do have decades ahead of me of being able to build an unbelievable creative compounding business, then it allows me to expand my mind where I can think, all right, what are all of the different things that I could do? Because I have so much time to consistently compound value. And so I challenge you to think about, in your life, where do you have a deep-seated negative belief, and how did you come up with that? Where did that thing come from? And is it even factual? Is it true? And start to think of counterexamples where it's like, all right, what could be the benefits of this? And if that benefit were to manifest long-term repeatedly and compound on itself, where would that take me then? So take your limiting beliefs and start to think through, are they real? And I would challenge you that most likely they're not. They're made up, they're emotional, and begin to figure out how can you actually turn them upside down into empowering beliefs that give you an advantage. It's a value proposition in your life. All right, so now we can dive into the fifth part, which is required qualities for success. Now, are these all the required qualities? No. So these are several required qualities that I believe are very, very important in order to be successful in whatever it is that you're trying to do, whatever the desired outcome is that you're trying to journey to and achieve. So before we talk about success, well, we need to define it. And this is where I want to give you what I believe is the single best definition of success. Success equals progress. If you took a step, you're winning. If you are making progress towards whatever it is that's important to you, you are successful, because if you keep making progress, you'll eventually achieve the goal. Success is not getting the goal itself. It's progress. So I want you to embody that. Success is progress. Success is progress. Success is progress. Progress is everything. All right, so now kind of other things that we need to have in order to make progress is we need to have courage. And I know that I've already talked about that in other videos and also in the beginning of this video, but courage is just saying, I know I'm afraid, I know there's uncertainty, I don't know how things are going to play out, but I'm going to do it anyways. Because if I don't make the decision and do it, I will never get there. So courage is being willing to do something even though you're slightly afraid, you know there's uncertainty, but it's important to you enough that you do it anyways. So then the second part is faith. And think of faith is a long-term belief. It is a belief in yourself. It's a belief that things will work out. It's a belief that you're smart enough or good enough or talented enough. It's belief in yourself that I will figure it out. I might not know exactly how to do it in the beginning, or maybe it's going to take me a long period of time to figure it out, but I will figure it out. And it's that faith in yourself, in circumstances, and other people. Faith it's a superpower. And I believe I've said that in a different video as well, but it is an absolute superpower because so few people have faith. And if you can build it, and that thing, it's a muscle. You don't just wake up and all of a sudden have deep faith in yourself and the world and other people and the economy and the government and all these things, but it's something you train. It's a mindset strengthening. And so we need faith because with faith, we can maintain discipline. If you truly have no hope, no belief in anything, you don't think anything's going to work out, there's no way to keep yourself doing the things that you need to do because your mind is just going to be like, dude, why would we keep doing this if it's not going to work? And your brain turns off, your willpower plummets, motivation tanks, discipline falls apart, everything starts falling apart. Well, then you resent yourself, and then there's a negative spiral of terrible emotions. You feel like a pile of trash. It's just this deep hole. And it all stems from not having belief in ourselves and belief that we will figure it out, faith. So discipline is being able to consistently do the things that we know that we need to do, even if we don't want to do them. Every area, to be successful, to make progress in anything, there's always going to be certain things that we don't want to do. There are goals that seem luxurious and amazing, and everybody wants to do them. But like behind the scenes, whoever it is that's doing those things, there's probably 20% or 30% or 40% of like the things that nobody wants to do or is not fun, but they have to be done because they're so important. Discipline is being able to do the things that we need to do that are both fun and not fun. We can't just get rid of the not fun things, at least in the beginning. If you delegate or hire anything like that, well then yeah, you can do that. But then there's the next requirement, which is patience. Very few people, and again, patience is a muscle. It's something that needs to be developed and slowly but surely appreciated over time so that it's an understanding that things that are long-term and worthwhile and big and important will not get done in a second. And they're probably not going to be successful on the first time. And think of Falcon Heavy. So the SpaceX launches. The iterative process that engineering team and Elon went through in order to get to the point where they now are at SpaceX, well, there are other leaders that probably would have thrown in the towel and given up because of the amount of money and capital investment that it took to be able to get there. And they would have viewed it as, look, we don't have enough time, we don't have enough money, we can't take the risk. And so not only would they not have patience, but they would have lost faith. And they would not have had the courage to keep going in order to figure it out. So patience is super important in achieving anything big, because if we get frustrated or if we get stressed or overwhelmed or we throw in the towel, well, now we've stopped making progress and now we have failed because we gave up. So patience is super important. And then finally is reflective iteration. So being able to take action, and regardless of what happens, if it's good or if it's bad, we reflect on it and ask ourselves what worked, what didn't work, and why. Why did this work? Why did this not work? What can we learn from it? Because from those learnings, you're going to improve the next strategy or the next action. And then that's going to continue developing over time. So courage, faith, discipline, patience, and reflective iteration, I believe are 5 very important qualities that any area of your life, if you're trying to succeed, if you're trying to make progress, these things are required. So now for the final part of this video, I want to pose to you several questions. And I know in the beginning of the video I said 3. I actually have 4 questions for you, but I want to pose these to you so that you can begin reflecting on your own life and your own career and think about the changes that you want to make. So the first is, what do you want? And if there's one promise I can give, it's you will never achieve something if you don't decide that you want it. So you got to ask yourself and write down, what do I want? If I want it, let's go get it. So what do I want? And then the second is just put those 2 dots on the page. This is what I want. And then number 2 is, where am I today? What is my current situation? And just seeing the gap between those two, it should be, for a lot of people, it becomes intimidating or scary. Instead, the way that we should look at it is, it's invigorating, it's exciting, it's inspirational, because in order to get from here to there, it's going to require growth. And growth feels good. It builds self-confidence. It's exciting. And so the moment we put those 2 pages or those 2 dots on the page, I hope you can look at that and go, yeah, I want that. I want to get there. And knowing how, if I am to get there, I need to become a better person, mentally, physically, emotionally, whatever, skills, knowledge, experience, whatever. Like, if we were already that person capable of doing that thing, we'd already have it. And so when you put those 2 dots on the page, you can immediately and visibly see, I need to grow. I need to get better. And that's exciting. All right, so then where do you want, or what do you want? Where are you today? And then the third is, how has self-doubt been limiting you? And that's where you can ask and focus in on that decision point. Whereas, why have I not decided to do it? Why have I not committed? Why am I not making progress? And I promise you, or can't promise, I would very sincerely challenge to bet that there's a limiting belief, and that limiting belief is causing self-doubt. You are doubting yourself in some way, shape, or form. And it is a weed. You want to just rip that thing out by the roots and realize it's not true. You know, where did that thing become true? Why did you start believing that that was true? Who told you? Or what happened in the past that made you believe that? And you got to just pull that thing out. It's not serving you. It's not going to make your life happier, healthier, wealthier, or allow you to give to other people. It's not serving you. So, how has self-doubt been limiting you? And then the fourth part is, what are you actually going to do about it? Because we can either keep procrastinating and keep kicking the can down the road and keep living out of fear, or you can realize that I need to step up. I need to have the courage to make a decision. Even though I don't know exactly how things are going to play out, there will be uncertainty. I'm willing to have the courage to actually take that next step, to try to start making progress. So I hope this video has been very helpful for you. Again, I'm Jamie. I come out with these videos every week, Monday at 6 a.m. Eastern. And if you're currently at a point in your life, your career, where you want to make a change and you're realizing that either you don't want to do it alone, or you're uncertain about what that would look like, or how to actually go about doing whatever it is that goal is, either personally or professionally, I encourage you to check out my website or my other videos. I'm starting to create a lot of resources for you, for both people I work with and also people who just watch these videos or consume content. So I wish you all the best. Have an amazing week. And again, let's make it another week of good personal growth.